Vampires as metaphors, undead mythology and symbolism. Vampires may or may not be real. But as a literary and popular culture concept, they are powerful metaphors for society. Throughout the ages, stories of vampires have remained a potent symbol in literature, film, and pop culture. This iconic archetype, far from being confined to the realm of fantasy and horror, has served as a unique metaphor for exploring various aspects of the human condition and societal issues. This video will delve into the ways vampires have been used as metaphors and symbols, focusing on their roles in representing concepts such as immortality, forbidden desire, power dynamics, and cultural fears. Vampires, as traditionally immortal beings, serve as metaphors for humanity's obsession with and fear of death. The vampire's eternal life embodies the human fantasy of defeating death, an ultimate manifestation of our desire for immortality. However, this seeming gift is frequently portrayed as a curse, reflecting our intrinsic understanding that life's value is intrinsically linked with its transience. In many tales, the vampire's existence is depicted as lonely and agonizing, signifying the melancholy of endless life, forever distanced from the natural cycle of life and death. The symbolism of the vampire is also laden with eroticism and forbidden desire. The act of a vampire feeding, usually depicted as a bite on the neck, has been interpreted as an expression of sexual intimacy, often illicit or taboo. Novels like Bram Stoker's Dracula or Anne Rice in Interview with the Vampire infuse their vampire characters with an alluring charm that simultaneously attracts and repulses. This dichotomy serves as a metaphor for societal fears and fascinations regarding sexuality, presenting it as something both seductive and dangerous. Basic phobias are a challenge for literary vampires, being a dread of the strange and unknown, a fear of the dark, and a fear of the enemy that lurks among us undetected. They might also stand for a dread of women's sexuality and of actual sexual desire. Such vampires frequently serve as sexual metaphors. They come out of the coffin to be welcomed or rejected, which can be taken to mean accepting or rejecting sexuality or a particular style of sexuality. The phallic symbolism of the vampire fangs and the penetration of biting and drawing blood emphasize the sexual element even further. Particularly in horror movies, the vampire frequently serves as a metaphor for human sin, illustrating what occurs when people reject God. It blends in well with civilization and presents as more civilized than the people it encounters. Its nature is animalistic nonetheless. It is a horrible human being. Its inability to endure sunshine is evidence that it has lost its ability to see the good in the light. According to some theories, bodies marked as vampires discovered during archaeological digs may have actually been those of immigrants and outsiders who were held responsible for the unusual illnesses and fatalities. However, a dental analysis has revealed that the vampires are local, and that immigrants were interred alongside locals. Vampires may occasionally symbolize individuals with impairments or disfigurements because they are perceived as being nearly human but not quite, and because disfigurements and disabilities were frequently characterized as signs of vampirism. The vampire myth can also symbolize power dynamics and exploitation. The relationship between a vampire and its victim often mirrors abusive power structures found in society. The vampire, with its supernatural strength and hypnotic powers, is a metaphor for oppressive forces that drain the vitality of the marginalized. The notion of the vampire feeding on the life force of its victims serves as a metaphor for exploitation, whether that be the wealthy preying on the poor, colonizers exploiting indigenous populations, or corporations draining resources from the environment. Blood drinking was a common practice in the ceremonies of many ancient civilizations. It was utilized as a component of witchcraft, as a religious ritual, as an offering to the gods, or to represent the forces of life and death. Nearly every culture has tales of supernatural beings consuming the flesh or blood of the living. Blood was thought to contain the life power, and ingesting it resulted in absorbing both that life energy as well as occasionally the characteristics of the person whose blood it was, because blood was thought to contain the soul. Lilith, who is also known as the first demon, may have been the oldest ancient deity to devour blood. Christianity forbids consuming human blood. Nevertheless, eating the flesh and drinking the blood of Christ is what is meant by the Eucharist or Holy Communion. The Eastern Orthodox Church does not use the term transubstantiation, but the Roman Catholic Church does, to describe the transformation of the bread and wine into the flesh and blood of Christ. Protestant denominations refer to the presence of Christ as a sacramental union, which means that the essential substance of the flesh and blood of Christ are present alongside the substance of the bread and wine, which remain present. It is believed that Jesus gave his followers bread during the Last Supper and instructed them to eat it since it was his body, which is where this custom first began. He then takes a cup, delivers it to his followers, and commands them to drink from it since it contains the cup of the covenant made through his blood. The wine is indicated in the Luke chapter 22 story to be symbolic of the blood that Jesus will shed during his crucifixion rather than physical blood. Paul the Apostle's first epistle to the Corinthians has the oldest known written description of the practice. It quickly rose to the top of Christian tradition. Additionally, blood was thought to offer a cure for aging and degradation, as was the case with Elizabeth Báthory, who murdered people in the 17th century. Blood drinking and vampires are Freudian projections of suppressed sexual fantasies and phobias. The vampire represents irrational guilt feelings and childish oral fixations. Vampires and the consumption of blood are Jungian symbols for our basic desires. The shadow archetype of the trickster, which deceives, is represented by the vampire. Vampires frequently serve as embodiments of contemporary cultural fears and anxieties. As noted by Nina Auerbach in her book Our Vampires, Ourselves, each generation creates the vampires it needs, meaning that the characteristics attributed to vampires often reflect societal concerns of the time. For instance, in the 1980s and 90s, a surge in stories about vampires spreading disease can be interpreted as a response to the AIDS epidemic. More recently, in the age of globalization and increasing connectivity, vampires have come to represent fears about loss of individuality or autonomy. In conclusion, the enduring popularity and malleability of the vampire archetype have allowed it to serve as a potent metaphor for a wide range of themes and issues. These creatures of the night, eternally poised between life and death, embody our fears, desires, and preoccupations, reflecting them back at us through the prism of their immortality. Whether they embody immortality, forbidden desire, power dynamics, or cultural fears, vampires have transcended their origins in folklore and horror, becoming an immortal metaphor in their own right. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to Connect Paranormal. This will allow us to make more videos. Thanks for watching.